to the, this would be the autumnal equinox version of the VLab Forum. So happy equinox coming up. It is Wednesday, September 18th, and this is Steve Smith, Director of the VLab, Director of MDL. We're here for another session of the VLab Forum. Today we are privileged to have Dana Strom of MDL, who is going to give us a brief introduction and a extensive demo on the scientific visualization of Ensemble and MBM, National Blended Model probability fields in the cloud. Last three words important, in the cloud, because this project is being developed and run in our instance of Amazon Web Services that we're using for some of MDL development. So we are joined here in the VLab studios by our technical production manager, John Chattel. And our format is about 30 minutes of content, and Dana's going to be driving the demo. And then we will open up the GoToWebinar for questions. So when we get to that point, please use the raise your hand feature of the GoToWebinar, and John will unmute you so you can ask your question to Dana directly, or use the chat feature if you so choose, in which case John will relay the question to Dana on your behalf. Also, a reminder that the VLab Forum is recorded, and shortly after the conclusion of this afternoon session, we will upload the recording to the VLab Forum website and make you aware of it so you can share it with your colleagues, friends, or whoever. And I think that covers it. So without further ado, I'll hand over the session to Dana Strom.
Thank you, Steve. First off, thank you for everyone who are attending. I am honored to be able to present this information to you. So if you can't hear me at any time on the phone, please let me know. I will do my best to project. But without further ado, let's get to it. Just a quick shout out to Dave Miller and Kevin McGrath, the developers of both the Ensemble viewer, the Ensemble visualization product, as well as the MBM forecast viewer. And we'll get more into those today, but just so you know whose names are attached to that development. So, a little more background information. So the SD chiefs asked MDL to prepare visualization capability to provide forecasters information about what is significant in the forecast, the range of possible solutions, and the potential impacts in terms of sensible weather. It's a 3-year SDI-funded project through FY20. It incorporates existing software and ideas through NCAR, SPC, Western and Southern regions. We've worked and had quite a few meetings with some other developers out in the field, and have gotten some very good ideas, which we'll show in just a bit. Amazon Web Services, AWS, has been used for the bulk of the development and viewing. We can display model output. One of the drivers behind this is getting more information to the field that they don't have available to them, so we can provide more data to the field that isn't available over the SBN or Nomad, such as the parallel national blended models, or the one that's in development. So there are 2 hyperlinks. The viewers are currently available through those 2 hyperlinks. We now include plumes, box and whisker plots, windroses, and violin plots for the guests. And we have a slider for quick visualization of the MBM percentile grids, categorical probabilities, and previous issuances. We are also looking to add paintballs, likelihood of achievement accumulation plots, running total plumes, and performance optimizations that we can get from Amazon Web Services that we may not be able to get on on-premise hardware. So those are kind of the drivers behind this, and what we have to offer. Now, slides are great, but I love demonstrations and live data. So we're going to jump right in. So this on your screen is the GEPS Ensemble viewer. You can see a large map there. You might recognize the United States. So up at the top, just a quick get to know the layout. So the top, the initialization hour, so which cycle of GEPS is it? This is our date selector, so you can select which date you'd like. We currently hold 2 days worth of data. And then in the top, we have the top drop downs, we have the forecast elements that we have available. So we have things like, dew point spread, mean sea level pressure spread, et cetera, along with the deterministic. We have some upper air products, and as well as being able to zoom in to different parts of the country and load that data. I'll get into this tab in just a second. Right now we're going to look at the map display. So we have the left is your preloaded forecasts, and so this is the projection box. You can see quickly see which day the forecast is, what valid time, and also what forecast projection it is. You can control this by clicking, but the easiest way and the way that we intend users to use is via the projection bar here. So you can quickly move between forecasts and between days. Now, if you don't like that so much and you want to use arrow keys, you can do that as well. Left, right does forecast back and forward in time, and then up, down is day. So you can go to the next 24-hour cycle, the next 24-hour projection by using the up and down keys. You can use that pretty well in full screen mode. It looks pretty nice on large monitors, but you can use the arrow keys left and right to go through forecast projection. And since you don't have the projection box, you can look at the top right corner, which has your initialization and your valid time. So you can easily see where you are in time using that. We also, along with most of our viewers, have a point readout. So in the top box here, you have your lat long with the forecast value. So if you have, if you want to get the exact number, if it's hard to discern with the color bar, you can just pull out that information by moving the cursor. Up top is your color bar, of course. In your right menu, you have some GIS options. So this is your data. You can, so this is your GEPS forecast. You can use a different base map if you'd like that. And you have your contours and wind bar opacity as well. And you do have, so we have the zoom and roam capability off by default. Because it causes, you can zoom in and get some updated wind bars and contours. You do have to reload the data in order to see that, but so it's off by default, but you can enable and zoom and roam around the map and get updated contours if you want more detailed information. We also have the GIS layers. So we have a few, we have the roads, we have population centers, we have CWA, boundaries, and we can, of course, add any other that we need. So those are the main interactions on the page. You can quickly, and I'll just show you what it looks like on fresh reload, just so you see what it looks like. So it initially loads with 2 meter mean temperature and mean sea level pressures and the 10-meter wind bars. So that's what comes up on load. And you can see we have forecasts out to 384 hours for temperature. So also, also available on this page is our point visualization. So we, at points across the CONUS as well as OCONUS, which I'll show in just a bit, you have this point map that is selectable, so you can get the member data at that point. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to zoom into Houston because there's a lot of rain going on. By default, it brings up Washington Dulles, but that's just so you have some data to start out with and something to look at, but you can zoom into the map, find your point of interest, and click. And then, so for Galveston, for this point, you can see at this top graph is this weather element. So right here by default, we have a 2-meter temperature, and here's your 2-meter temperature grid. It also pulls up the QPF, instantaneous QPF with the box and whisker plot. It also shows the windrows and the bias corrected and the raw member data in a violin plot format. So you can see the distribution over the between the bias corrected and the raw.
So Dana, could you kind of walk us through this particular example of the type of information you could get from, say, the violin plot?
Sure. Well, so you can, so really it's all about certainty. Dave Miller and Ruth, feel free to step in if you have anything else to add, but it's all about the distribution and the certainty of the forecast. So if you have a cluster of members, then you know that there's a pretty certain forecast. But if you have a violin plot that's a little bit more spread out, maybe you won't, maybe you can't, go with the ensemble mean or things like that. You know that there's a little bit more uncertainty in the forecast, and we might be able to find a better example through a different time period. So we're going to go through.
So when you see the bias corrected and the raw, if you have a regime change, front's coming through or whatever, then you may not want to use the bias corrected at that point because it's changing. But if the weather is going to be similar to the last couple of days, then you might want to go with the bias corrected. So that's why those are broken out like that.
Right.
And then you can see just from this just how much the bias corrected has changed the data.
Right. So down on the bottom of the screen, you have a bar that you can click and drag and go through time and update the projection hour. So that corresponds to the vertical black bar in the top, and this and the QPF are aligned temporally. So you can go through the the windrows and the bias corrected and raw member data, update accordingly, so you can see out in time the certainty of the ensemble members at that forecast projection hour. You can also change the data from 2-meter temp to elevated temp. So you say you're looking at precipitation. You want to quickly see if it's going to potentially be snow. Depending on your elevation, 925 or 850 might be better for you. 850 if you're out west. These we can of course add more, but these are what we decided to start out with. We also have 2-meter dew and relative humidity in here as well. Now these charts, they are interactive, so you can, if you put your cursor over the axes, you can scroll and make the axes bigger or smaller, and that's both temporally and vertically. So you can zoom in on any part of the graph and interact with it that way. If you need to get a little bit more granular, you can also reset your axes. If you want to go back to the default view, you can also do the same on the vertical axis for a QPF, and as well for the violin plots. Now, if you think that this is something that someone should pay attention to and you wanted to send it off in a quick email, you can click the camera up in the top right corner, and it will download right to your desktop, and you can send this in an email when Windows decides to plot up the image. Well, come on, image. And there we go. You can take that, throw it in an email, and send it off to someone and say, hey, we should pay attention to this. That's nice and convenient. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up for the guest viewer, and I'm going to move on to the MBM forecast viewer. So this is the MBM forecast viewer that you see when you initially load the page. We have, so you can tell it's very similar design. We have our forecast projection box here. Loaded initially on load is max temperature, so which is why we only have so few projections out in time, because it's max temperature. It's once every 24 hours. We have again our selection boxes at the top here. We have both the operational and the parallel versions of Blend for access. We keep 5 days worth of hourly data accessible via the calendar, and we have every cycle of the MBM. Today, at the moment, we have a 3-hour offset, but so we would have more data, except there was an emergency switch on W Coast, and so our live data feed is currently down. But we have up through 12Z, we were able to get most of that data. And then up in the top, we have our selection. Now, you may notice some weather elements are grayed out and some are not, and that marks availability for that blend runtime. So this is our blend runtime here. If it's available, it will be this blue highlightable that denotes that it's available. And if it's not, it'll tell you, we're just about done configuring this, but it'll tell you what hour it should be available for. So so you can, you don't have to go searching around for data. You should know what data is available and what is not. So we have just about all of the weather elements for for version 3.1 and version 3.2. We are working on updating our data stream to be more real time than it is. And using things like PI Notify, we'll be able to get data into the system relatively quickly, on the order of 10 minutes as opposed to 3 hours that we have right now, 3 hours or more. So when the data becomes available, we should be able to pick it up within 10 to 15 minutes, and it should be viewable on the site. So the interactions on this page are much like the other. You have your forecast slider on the left with your projection box that's interactive. This viewer is not, the zoom and roam is not turned off by default. So you can zoom in and hover over any grid point you like, get your cursor readout value, and you also have your information box in the top right with your weather element, initialization time, and valid time. So you can very easily see where you are in time and space. So we're going to actually interact with this a little bit, because there's a fun little tropical system that we want to look into. So I'm going to go to yesterday at 0Z, and I'm going to look at the QPF06 data. So that was me going through. I selected a day, I selected an hour, and I selected a weather element. And now it preloads the left menu. When it turns from gray to black, then you know that the data has been loaded from the server. And but if it's not done loading yet, you can still interact with the hours that are updated. So you can scroll on through and you can see the different tropical systems there in the QPF6 data. And I'm most interested in Imelda. So we can animate this through time, and so you can see how that forecast evolves, of course. But a fun little feature that we just released this morning, yesterday morning, is so our certainty slider. So this is all about this slider. It drives certainty space, right? Probabilistic space, certainty space. So it's like how confident are we in this forecast? How is this forecast evolving? Things like that. So if we just take this valid time of Wednesday at 0Z, and we want to see how this forecast evolves. So we know Imelda really just started coming around. And so we can look back in time at this valid time, and we can look back to see how the forecasts were leading up to this time. And we can really see that 48 hours ago, this was just a whisper. You know, there was some precip that was around, but really it wasn't until 12 hours out from this issuance time that really things started, maybe 24, you started getting whispers of it being some sort of tropical in nature, you know, having some more tropical forcing. But really it wasn't until 24 hours, 12 hours before this that you even realized that it was coming about. So you can quickly go back and forth in time and see how this forecast has evolved over the past few issuance times. So just a reminder, so this is pulling up the forecast hour that's valid at the same time 6 hours prior to the issuance time that you selected. And that'll be noted up here. So this was, of course, Monday at 18Z that this was made. And so you can just click through and see how each evolve over time. And now, so that's, of course, deterministic. So let's look at the PQPS data. I clicked twice, I'm sorry, it's my fault. So this is loaded. When you click PQPF in the menu, brings up probabilistic QPF, you have your 50 percentile loaded. And this is your forecast hours, and you can see how it proceeds through time. So that's all well and good, but we want to see how the different percentiles are. So we can get to, say, forecast hour 48, and we can click this to preload the 25th percentile, the 10th percentile, 75th percentile, 90th, 95th, and then you can just see how, you know, between the different percentiles, how much rain is expected. So another thing too is, so you'll note that this is black. If you say you want to, the black denotes which percentile is preloaded. If you say want to preload all the forecast hours for the 75th percentile because you think it's leading to be the most accurate for that forecast for whatever reason, you can double click on that and it will preload all of the 75th percentiles, and you can then animate through time space, projection space. So you can, and then, say you want to then, for the 36-hour projection, you say, all right, I want to see what the other percentiles are doing. So you can click those, and you can go and move and animate through percentile space. So that's the second way to utilize the certainty slider. And there's one more that we use. So there's deproj dt, which was the first one. There's percentile space here. And now let's go. So there's a little snow that's happening in the forecast. Just a little, but it's there. So we're going to go find the snow. Yeah. There we go. Oh, there it is. Let's zoom in to the snow and let's see how. All right, so we're all preloaded. Let's zoom in a little bit more. So here's our deterministic snow accumulation, 6-hour snow accumulation. So we can see by the color readout that we're about, it looks like the deterministic has somewhere between 1.5 inches. We're seeing a few smaller, but about 1.5 as a max or so. Now we can see how this forecast is evolving in time. So it looks like as we go back it looks like the snow amounts are starting to increase a little bit more. It's starting to be more confident that there might be some more snow. And of course, we can we can go through and see how that is evolving over the forecast. We also have probabilistic snow amounts. So snow 24, the probability of 24-hour snow. I did it again. I don't. So this is of course the projected slider, but we've preloaded the greater than 0.1 inches of snow. So this is the probability that more than a tenth of an inch of snow will fall over this 24-hour period. So we can move in projection space, forecast projection space, and see this little maximum here around the valid time that we were looking at previously. So then we can say, okay, well, how much is it thinking in terms of snow amount? So we can then move in percentiles, in exceedance space, so threshold space. So we can say, okay, so it's really, there's not too high of a chance that we're going to get more than 6 inches of snow in the Rockies here. And just like the percentile slider, you can double click and preload all of the 2-inch exceedance forecasts for that. So if you wanted to see, okay, if you wanted to really stratify your data with the exceedance levels, you can just double click and it'll preload all of that right in your view there. And let's see. We have again GIS layers, population centers, your CWAs. We have ArcSys in here as well, and your cities and all that. Your data, of course, has opacity and all that, just like the other viewer before. And with that, I think I've just about mentioned all of the fun bells and whistles involved with the GEPS viewer and the MBM forecast viewer. Dave, Bruce, do you have anything else to add that I may not have?
Well, one thing you may want to mention is that the intention is to get the features that we have in the guest viewer into the MBM viewer, and the features that we have in the MBM viewer, like the certainty slider, into the guest viewer. We're just doing it this way so that we have two different developers working on it, the same underlying software, and then we can move the features over. So this is a way for us to get these things done quicker.
Correct. And
put them together. So you'll eventually see the wind roses and the violin plots both in the MBM and the GEPS.
Perfect. Thank you.
And we do have Alaska and Hawaii, Bill.
Oh,
Bill is in the room.
Oh yeah, here.
They're referring to Bill Ward.
Here, so if we pull up, I'll just.
Actually, for the guests.
Yeah, for guests. We will have Alaska in the forecast viewer. We wanted to get the certainty slider up before we moved over to other domains. But you just click Alaska, your forecast projection changes to polar stereographic, and here is your Alaska forecasts with your wind bars and contours. We also have Trop Pacific, and Puerto Rico is also there. We do not yet extend all the way to Guam, is that correct, Dave?
Correct.
But
Points are there.
But we do have points for Guam at the moment. So the interactions are just the same for every forecast region. But so right now we have Alaska, Tropical Pacific, and CONUS. But we have sample points for Puerto Rico as well. And we have sample points for Puerto Rico, Guam, Alaska, CONUS.
So I don't get hit with a ball, my hand's up.
Yeah.
Will you be extending it down to American Samoa?
I suppose you could.
I don't see why not.
Okay, well, so thank you very much, Dana. Let's proceed on to more questions in the room if there are. And John, you want to check to see if those of you who are online would like to raise your hand to ask a question or use the chat feature. Now's the time to do it. We have Dave Rudak in the room. Yes, Dave.
Don't throw the ball, please. Okay. I'm just wondering, when you speak about the GEFS bias corrected product, where you're comparing the PDFs, where does that product come from? What bias correction is that?
It comes from MSS, bias corrected forecast grids for gas.
Okay. Thanks.
Now, I will note that there's not as many elements for bias corrected. We started with bias corrected first, although I started at one point. By the way, this is Dave Miller's pocket. I started with, when I started developing this, also we included the raw stuff, guess as well, which has a lot more elements with it. But at the moment, we decided to go just with bias corrected, and we can certainly add the raw data as well, such as some of the raw grids, which are not bias corrected, and for elements such as like CAPE and SIN and a few of the other elements that are out there.
Okay.
That I've seen from the grid files. And I should mention too that for NBM, then when we do the windroses, we want to get those. That's why we're interested in getting those component grids from NBM, so we can see the individual correction, the component, and the bias corrected components, and have those show up on your violin plots.
Okay.
All right.
So the methodology allows that, but I mean, we basically average the U's and the V's and come up with a direction that way. We don't actually come up with a direction for each.
Yeah, it's a violin plot. The winds may not work that way.
Right. Direction.
Another question in the room, Tabitha.
Okay, I know that some of the tools that your group's developing has dynamic color bars.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a static color bar, or can you adjust it if you're out of range?
Sure. So currently none of them are set up to do so.
Okay.
The GEPS currently uses GDAL DEM, so that actually creates PNGs. But the forecast viewer is driven by grids on the back end, and those are able to be changed dynamically.
It will be able to?
The NBM will be able to.
Okay, can't currently, but will be able to.
Cannot currently, but will be able
Nice.
to.
Yeah, I looked at that's something.
Yeah.
As Dave pointed out, they're working on that on the NBM viewer, and
Right.
We started on static on the guests, and we'll try to.
I know you figured it out with some other tools, so
Right.
I figured it was probably on your radar if it wasn't already
Eventually.
in there. Cool. Thanks.
Okay, John, do we have any questions from the online audience?
Yes, we have two folks who apparently have raised their hands and are willing to give us a question. So let's unmute John Brost.
JJ, bro, JJ, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. Great stuff. I got some early previews of this, and I'm very impressed. Incredible work. Thank you so much. I guess I had three questions, so sorry about that.
No, go right ahead.
Okay. I'm most interested, although I love it all, the probability viewer. And so you have a violin plot there, and I was just wondering if you guys considered a visualization where you basically combine all the data, so you don't have that strong vertical discontinuity between the raw versus the bias corrected, and then use like a color or a shape to differentiate between the raw and the bias corrected. That way you have like more of a traditional looking violin plot as opposed to the one with the vertical discontinuity. Have you thought about that at all?
We haven't considered it. I mean, just getting the violin plots to plot up the way they were was a success story in and of itself. I mean, it's certainly something we can take into consideration. And I will say that if you actually zoom in on it, you don't see quite as much of that vertical display, and it kind of blends in a little bit more, because I was a bit more concerned about that myself. But I'm sure we could take it into consideration. Yeah, I think we were following more the standard techniques for showing two different data sets on the violin, and so that's pretty much what they do.
Is that inherited from the NCAR or somebody else? Or?
Well,
No,
No, I don't think NCAR had these.
Southern region.
Southern region did it, but they didn't
JJ.
have the violin split, like,
Right.
but that's, if you look at the way in statistics that they show the violin plots, they'll often show, the two different data sets that way. Because really you're wasting the violin if they're symmetrical, because both sides are showing you the same information.
Okay, Jay, you had another question or two. Go ahead.
Yes, okay. On the NBM viewer, which I really love, have you all considered producing grids that show things like the difference either in raw numbers or percentages between the latest NBM and the previous official forecast, so that at first glance you could see, okay, the newest NBM is only like a couple percent different than our official forecasts that we have going. So really no reason to make changes to the new NBM. Just plug it in and it seems to match our previous thinking, so go with it. Versus a strong difference, right? Huge change would then be a quote unquote target of opportunity, something for discussion, something for collaboration. We've just been doing a lot of brainstorming here about what kind of visualizations does a forecaster need to recognize something needs attention. And I like these ideas of differences or like, what was the other, like maybe a standard deviation grid. I'm not so sure about that, but or a, what do I call it? The forecaster convergence score, like a grid that shows forecaster convergence score. Anyway, just some thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. We have in the plan, anyway, we do have the idea to incorporate paintball diagrams, and we were going to, the original idea was to plot up, say, the last four blend runs, and traditional paintballs are for convection above DVZ, reflection above the 60 DVZ or something like that. But that can be done for really any threshold, especially if we don't need to store extra data because we can just color the grid a different way. So that's one possibility we've thrown around. But your difference grid idea is interesting as well. But yeah, thanks for that feedback.
No problem. I think that's all I had. Everything else was answered, so appreciate it.
Go ahead. Yes. JJ, bro. JJ, yes. Somebody asked who you were, JJ. So, okay. Someone else, John.
Yeah, we have Jeff Logsden who's got a question for us. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff, you there?
All right, well, I'll read his question for him because he also took the time to type it in. He says, is or will there be a run-to-run evolution field, sort of like AWIP's dprog and /DT?
Well, you can show the change with the certainty slider dprog DT to go back and back and back. I suppose we could actually calculate differences between them and show those. I'm not, I really don't know if that's more helpful than just animating the dprog DT or not.
Jeff, are you responding? He says, I have nothing. Okay. So I think you answered his question. All right. Go to Frank Alzheimer?
Sure.
Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Violin plots are not particularly my strong suit. I'm looking at the information you've got on there, and I'm really struggling to grab a whole lot out of it. So I was wondering if there's a way to have some kind of an example or a guide that shows up on these pages so that when somebody's looking at it, they have a concept of what it is exactly they're looking at.
Yeah, sure we can. That sounds like a great idea.
Can I add to that? That's a question I was going to ask earlier too. In addition to what Frank's asking, I think it'd be great to have a page that has everything on knobology so that you know how to venture through all of this that you showed today and some of the changes that can be made on the fly.
Frank, do you have another question or comment?
No, that was it. I certainly like both of the pages. I just, when I look at the violin plot, you know, the way it's set up, I'm sure the information is great, but it's good, in my opinion, to have a reference as to, you know, you can see clustering and stuff like that on the violin plot, but I'm not used to looking at them sideways, and so maybe just an example. And I think that you would get more use from the field, because if you're not used to looking at probability distributions in this way, you're going to get forecasters who'll say, I have no idea what that means, and kind of just get turned off right away.
Okay, thank you for the comment, suggestion. John,
Yes, Kwang Kong has a question for us.
unmuted, go ahead, Kwong.
I'm sorry,
Are you there?
sorry, no,
We can hear you, Kwang.
We can hear you.
oh, you can? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Yeah, I was asking a question, for users, when can the new, graphics, from new model run, arrive? Like if I want to see the new 18Z run, like approximately when would we expect the graphics to arrive? Hello?
Silver Spring, this is Ken Spur. We can't hear you.
Hello? 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 Okay.
Juan, this is Ken Spur with MDL. I can hear you fine, but I'm not hearing them either.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't hear, I didn't hear a response.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Kevin McGrath can't hear us either.
Okay.
All right, hang,
Let them know, hang on.
yes.
So we can't.
Oh, we're back apparently.
Guys, we can hear you again.
You can hear us again? Okay, all right. So sorry about that. Don't know what happened. Gremlins in the network, but Dave?
Yeah,
Dave?
just saying that the latency for NSTEP to put the latest GEFS run into the TGFTP server is about 6 hours, and it takes a while then to process the data into these visualizations. So, yeah, it's unfortunately a fairly long latency.
And
now for the MBM.
So for the MBM viewer, since we're tapped right into W codes, our latency, so right now our latency is pretty high. We're about 3.5 to 4 hours. But the new data downloading that we're going to install in the next few weeks here, we'll probably have our latency down to 10, 15 minutes. And with that will come us being able to list out which elements are available and when they're coming in, and we'll be able to get a rough time of when they come in for each hour. And then we can also, we're also envisioning adding up probably in the top right corner a little blend cycle time % complete, so you can see as it's coming in, it'll refresh at some regular interval, where you'll be able to tell if the elements are coming in, and then when they come in and how much of the data we have for that cycle time.
Okay, great. Kwong, do you have anything else? Does that answer your question?
So like, is that like about 6 hours right now, the latency? So Well, for the 18Z run, then that would be 0Z by 0Z. I should expect to see the new graphics.
Well, the 18Zs, it starts, the data for, at 0Z, the data for around 0Z, the data for the 18Z run will be starting to become available. And then once that becomes available, then the processing starts for the images, and that usually is somewhere around unfortunately another like hour or so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's so many, I mean, there's 384 hours, well, there's actually 120 some hours worth of data projections, because the GEFS data is every 3 hours up to 192, and then it goes to 6 hours after that. So it takes a while to process the data for the regions.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Dave, that's going to be improving though, right?
That's what?
That will be improving.
It'll be improving.
I certainly hope so. That's what we're going for.
For the blend, for the blend, it's going to be getting, I heard 10 minutes, we hope.
10 to 15 minutes,
yeah.
Depending on server load.
I still don't have any, the processing I'm working to improve I don't have any control over when the data is available. So there's always going to be somewhere around a 6-hour latency between the model cycle time and when that model is available, or that cycle time is available.
Okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
All right, thank you. John, others?
Sure, we've got the Eastern Region Rock on the line, and they are unmuted.
Eastern Region Rock, go ahead.
Hey, John, Chattel, and Steve, this is Brian Moretsky from Eastern Region. In case you can't hear me, I also typed my thing in chat. Just wondering about access.
Password access?
Yep, it's LDAP protected. ICAM authentication in, so you can use either your CAC or your username and password. If you're on Firefox, it does not default to CAC. It does username and password only, unless you enable it in the options.
Did I answer your question, Brian?
Yes.
Brian? We lose Brian?
Perhaps he got muted himself. I'll take that as a signal that he got it the right.
All right, so yes, LDAP authentication, CAC authentication, unless you're in Firefox, in which case you have to
use
username, password. Others?
Yes, we have Jack Zettelmeyer, unmuted.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, hi. I had like 6 questions. I was trying to beat JJ's 3, but you answered several of them, so that's great. But the data itself, is the data in the cloud, or is the viewer in the cloud?
The viewer's in the cloud, but go ahead, Dana.
Both.
Both.
For the MBM forecast viewer, we have data on disk that gets processed, but we also throw it to an S3 bucket. Some of the cool things we can do with that is put a load leveler in front of it, and we can get improved load times. So our tests have shown. So the data lives both on premises disk and in the cloud, and also we have redundant viewers in the cloud and on premises.
Okay. And the images themselves, are they images? What's the format of?
For the MBM forecast viewer, they are in GRIB2 format. When they get thrown over to the user, they do come over the internet as PNGs, but that's because we're utilizing map server on the back end that will interpret the GRIB data as a PNG and send it back.
Okay, so you're viewing PNGs in here.
The data itself that we are coloring is in GRIB2.
That's for MBM.
That's for the MBM.
For GEFS, these are static images over a particular region, but the contours and wind barbs are generated on the fly by map server, but they're returned as a PNG.
Okay. The other thing was the variables that you show. Is that all the variables? Does it auto detect them, or do you have to set those?
Those are set. Those are set in a JSON, configurable.
in the a relationship to the 4-panel NBM viewer? Is it the same code underneath?
No.
No.
So this is new and different?
It's very much different.
Okay.
Sorry, Jack, what did you say?
I was wondering if this is the same code base as the NBM 4-panel viewer thing.
No, not really.
The technologies are somewhat similar and somewhat parallel, but no, we didn't reuse much of that code.
Okay. Two more. One, like the violin plots. Can you maximize that little feature?
Not at this time. But you can zoom in on it.
Okay.
I don't know if that was something that, I mean, you can zoom in on it and scroll and such, so.
Okay. And then my last one was sort of, the future of this and where it ends up. But I know someone else always asks about an O&M tail. Do you plan to hand it off somewhere or no?
The answer to that is we don't know for sure. Our initial goal is that we're going to put this into the cloud and production on the cloud, and that it will be available to everybody who has a NOAA LDAP, and it will be out there until such time as we decide should it go into operations, and then there's also a queue for getting into operations, and it would have to get in line and all that. So we don't have the answers to that. That question surrounds lots of the web type applications that the Weather Service currently has. So what we're doing is trying to make the best of it and get it available in a fairly reliable manner, working on Amazon Cloud.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add to that, Jack, that, I mean, there may be, in the next year or so, some emerging cloud operations for Weather Service that might be, FSMA low, that sort of thing. We're looking, different parts of the agency are looking at that right now. So this perhaps could be suitable for that sort of cloud operations, but it's not quite here yet. So yeah, we're not sure.
Okay. To go back to the beginning of this, the reason that Ming and the SSD chiefs and everything want us to get started on this is because there's a lot of data becoming available that's probabilistic from the NBM and other sources that we're really not taking advantage of, and we don't have the bandwidth to send out on the SBN or put on nomads and all that. So this is a way to make it available for forecasters to look at. Ideally, yeah, they want it on their local machines and be able to do things, but that's just not practical at this point in time. So what we're doing is trying to get these data available in a reasonable, reliable fashion for internal NOAA use.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Other questions, John?
Yes, we have Jonathan Joyce has a question for us. Would you like to ask a question, Jonathan?
Yeah, so I just wanted to go a little more in depth. So I heard you have GRIB2 data, you're converting it to PNG. Are you using Python to do that? And that's on the fly image generation?
So for the NBM forecast viewer, so we store the data as GRIB2. And the data that gets sent over the internet from map server is a PNG, but that's not what we produce. So we keep the raw GRIB2 data, and then it gets drawn on the fly based on the colors that we tell it to draw. So that's all done on the fly. We store the data on the back end. We don't do any manipulation. We just color it based on the value that's in the GRIB file itself.
And do we use Python?
And we do not use Python.
Thank you.
And for the guest viewer, we use GDAL-DEM in order to process the imagery through static PNGs. I may be moving towards the NBM viewer solution to use map server in the not too distant future or at a later date.
Okay, and what about on your front end? Are you using any particular libraries to generate those plots?
We're using Plotway.
Okay.
And the mapping software is OpenLayers 4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, John?
Sure. We have Keith Meyer. How do we request to add more points to the point visualization?
Send us an email.
Yeah, right now, I just want to note that the original points that you see were from the NCAR ensembles. That was my starting point on the project. So, instead of using the grid points, which we picked up from the Medford, Oregon WFO guys, Shad and Charles, I used the NSEP interpolation scheme instead to go in between points at a location. So for more locations, like Dave said, we could probably just send us an email and we'll add them.
Let me interject here. I'm sensing a lot of interest in this. Not surprising from field folks. So do we have yet like a VLab community with a forum where people can comment on things, suggest things? Is that in the plans?
Sure. Yeah. No, we already have that for the ensemble.
For the ensemble.
For the ensemble is there. I'm near certain I created one for the MBM forecast viewer as well, and that would be a great place to send feedback. So I'll make sure that's up and available, and then we can use that as a place for feedback. We are very much open to feedback and want to hear from users, and if there are bugs, tell us. It's the only way that we'll.
Okay, so if people go to VLab, they can search and find the ensemble viewer community and the MBM viewer.
Yep.
Okay.
MBM forecast viewer. Yeah.
And there's a forum already set up.
I believe so for both.
All right. Well, we'll check on that. So, I mean, like suggestions like JJ was making about derived fields that might be of use in the forecast process. I mean, that sounds very intriguing. Where specialized things that could maybe help the CFP or whatever, we might be able to pre-generate those or add them to the list, that kind of stuff. Thank you. John, do we have?
Sure. Let's go with Melissa Petty. She wants to know what technologies were used for the user interface, maps, charting, etc.
That's Missy Petty at GSD. So go ahead.
Yeah, so for the user interface, it's a combination of things. We have Bootstrap, which is the main user interface. We're attempting to go to a more responsive design. We're not there yet, but the idea was that if somebody in the field wanted to take a tablet out with them, they could actually look at it there or else on their phone and view these displays and products in that way as well. So the map, I think I answered the question. The map is the mapping software is OpenLayers 4, and what else do we have for that?
Sure. So for guest OL4, the page was made utilizing Bootstrap and normal jQuery UI, and the data, of course, the PNGs server side. MBM forecast viewer is Grid2 on the back end, map server interaction served as PNGs displayed in OL4, also in the same interface.
Yeah, and same thing with as far as map server. We do a combination of map server. We use GDAL utilities for the PNGs, the static PNGs. We use map server for on-the-fly generation of the contours and wind barbs.
Okay. Thanks, guys. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to have to wrap this up. I want to thank Dana and Dave Miller in particular for insightful demo and fielding, the very good questions from the audience. Reminder that we will upload the recording of this to the VLab Forum website shortly after the conclusion of the session. And coming up in October, we're switching gears to look at mesoanalysis. So on October 16th, we've got Kim Runk, Director of the Operations Proving Ground, going to be providing a talk on the evaluating the mesoanalyst role for collaborative severe weather IDSS. And then in November, following up, insights from the Mesoanalyst Bootcamp, which is also at OPG by Jesse Lundquist of WFO Goodland, Kansas. And then way out into the new calendar year, that should be 2020, John. The future of the National Water Model Visualization. Mark Glottemans will be presenting that, so book that if you're interested, speaking of visualization, so that'll be in the new calendar year. So I want to thank everyone, and we will see you all in October. Signing off.